I call to order this meeting of the Untitled Township Board of Trustees. Everybody will stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before us, we have our agenda. Are there any additions, deletions, or corrections by fellow board members or department heads at this time? I have none. Okay, the agenda will stand as presented. First item we have is the sheriff's report. Lieutenant Barber.
I'll go through here fairly quickly. I know you each had your own copy to review and get more in depth, but I'm just going to cover some of the high points for you. Largely, as far as the supervision staff, myself, Sergeant Tony, and Sergeant Fenner, here again this year, our deputies are able to visit once a year for locations. And we had a couple guys switched from 2020 to 2021, but no huge changes there. We start looking at the calls for service. When we look at the big overall number, they were down a little bit from 2019. So we kind of looked into that a little bit more and took out some of the other things, the traffic stops and crashes. And we found that just our regular calls for service were actually up for 2020 from 2019. A little bit of a surprise as we were going through it. It felt like it was still busy. We kind of see getting into the numbers, it was a little bit busier. Start looking at some of the violent crimes. Down in some of the categories, shootings were down to 1. Robberies and sex offenses were up just a little bit. Assaults and domestics were down. And again, none of these were huge changes across the board. We get into some of the non-violent calls for service. Things that we would have expected to probably be up a little more, we're up more with people being home, kids being out of school, some of the 911 hang-ups, and people seeing suspicious activity, noise complaints, things like that. We would have expected to see some increases there, and that's exactly what happened. Start looking at the property crimes. Good signs on the breaking and entering and burglary incidents. Some reductions there. Again, we would have expected that with people being home. Burglars tend to try to avoid people being home. They really don't want that confrontation for the most part. So no surprises there. I guess I'd preface off this with saying 2020 is hard to use as a metric to compare anything over a period of time. It's kind of taking the numbers for what they are.
Sort of skews the data.
Yeah. Not a good comparison for anything. Pretty large decrease in alarm calls, again, people not being home. Being home. We start looking at some of the traffic activity. Crashes were down significantly. Reflects that stay-at-home order and people not getting out and about. And that was across the board for what we handled, as well as highway patrol. That total number was down in the township. Fortunate again to have second year in a row with no traffic fatalities in the township. Certainly a bright spot there. A decrease in overall injury crashes. Traffic stops were down significantly last year as we tried to take steps to avoid spreading things and keeping our staff safe as well as the public. So we anticipate those numbers taking a turnaround. We've already started to turn those around and pick that back up. Try to work on that area. Joe and the road department were busy with the tractor trailers last year, 51 locations. Anticipate using that a lot more again this year. We move into the detective's report. Detective Ross will be retiring later this year, so we'll be working on replacement for him. I'm sure the chief and the sheriff will work very hard to make sure we have a good replacement. I believe that's going to be in the summer months when he retires, so that'll be a hole to fill there. 127 assigned cases for him this year. Some pretty time-intensive cases that he had this past year. Kept him busy. Move into some of the notable cases from the township this past year. We did unfortunately have an aggravated murder right towards the end of the year. We were able to quickly identify a suspect and get him into custody. I know we had some discussions about some of the problems at the Rituka Lounge. They had opened for a little while. We did end up charging 6 of their security guards operating without proper licenses from some incidents that happened over there. That business is now closed. As in the past, we have a continued relationship with Leads Online for residents to record some of their property and some assistance for our investigations. I believe the sheriff included some additional information on that for the next newsletter. Again, following up for this school year with the same school resource officers at Plain Local Schools. A lot of the special events and things that we typically involved in were all canceled last year. So some of the community events that we're part of, unfortunately, we weren't able to engage in those kind of things. One of the nice things when we start talking about the SROs is Sergeant Smith and Deputy Bogunovich were deemed experts by the Ohio Attorney General's office. Sergeant Smith being assigned to Plain Local Schools. We've got some of the numbers from incidents at the schools, nothing really unexpected there. Hopefully we're able to do things a little different with Safety City this year. Take the fire department with that to handle that in a virtual event there. We're still able to do our Operation School Bus this year. However, we didn't station deputies on the buses. They were trailer buses and worked in school zones. See how that went. Started having some meetings for the OBI task force. We did not have any checkpoints last year, but we hope to get things going with that again this year. And then finally, as you start looking through your vehicle report, probably the best condition your fleet's ever been in, at least in my recent recollection. We've got one car that's being built out now that came in. It was ordered last year, and then there's a second one. So I would anticipate that last Dodge Charger going by, and that last Crown Vic will probably be pretty quick behind that, so we'll be all the Interceptor utilities. And just to wrap up for 2020, we had a total of 20,640 full police activities logged for the year. Any questions about anything?
Good one. Good work as always. Good work as always.
Thank you. Okay.
That's good. Thank you. Okay, that's going to take us to the fiscal officer's report. Mr. Wolf.
Thank you. Fiscal Officer number 1 is a request for resolution to authorize the payment of pending warrants in the amount of $330,913.03.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Mrs. Harless?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Fiscal Officer number 2 is a request for resolution to authorize payment of regular payroll in an amount not to exceed $250,000.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Mrs. Harless?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Fiscal Officer number 3 is a request for resolution to authorize payment for the following medical claims.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Mrs. Harless?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Fiscal Officer number 4 is the financial report for February.
Sorry, I was just going to say, if anybody's got questions, seats on after.
Fiscal Officer number 5 is a request for resolution to appoint Tina Beal as the Deputy Fiscal Officer pursuant to Ohio Revised Code certify this position of the Stark County Treasurer effective April 1, 2021.
I will so move.
Second.
Discussion, this is just part of the whole career progression and transition with Luther retiring at the end of the month.
Correct, yeah, it's transition to Tina.
How long has she been in this?
It's been, yeah, pretty close to 6 months, I
Okay. She's feeling pretty comfortable.
think. Yeah, she's
On the-
been working with Luther, kind of shadowing on that. Yeah, it's going well.
Okay. Roll call?
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Mrs. Harless?
Yes.
Fiscal Officer number 6 is a request for resolution to authorize the following transfers.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Mrs. Harless?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Fiscal Officer number 7A is a request for resolution to authorize the Plain Township Fiscal Officer to request an additional amended certificate of estimated resources from the Stark County Auditor for $375,000 and to appropriate these funds as follows.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Mrs. Harless?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Fiscal Officer number 7B is a request for resolution to authorize the Plain Township Fiscal Officer to request an additional amended certificate of estimated resources from the Stark County Auditor for $375,000 and to appropriate these funds as follows.
I will move on 7B.
Second. Discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Mrs. Harless?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Fiscal Officer number 8 is a request for a liquor license from Tienda El Torito LLC located at 3300 Whipple Avenue Northwest, Canton, Ohio 44718.
Did the sheriff have any concerns or
No.
we're good? All right. Say, go ahead and move forward unless somebody's got an objection. Okay.
Okay. Fiscal Officer number 9 is a request for resolution to authorize a refund as follows for overpayments for EMS as requested by Ohio Billing.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Mrs. Harless?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Fiscal Officer number 10 is a request for resolution to authorize, or to accept Luther Russard's letter of retirement after over 13 years of service with Plain Township effective March 31, 2021.
I will so move on fiscal officer number 10.
I will bittersweetly second that.
Discussion? Luther's been an amazing asset to the township, and I know we still got some time here in the month, but I mean, the record definitely needs to reflect. I know as I come on and, you know, the transition with he and Joe Ellen and Skip and different fiscal officers, he's definitely been a steady force over there and helping keep us all straight. And, you know, personality, just a good, cool, calm, collected demeanor on the top of things. I mean, on a personal basis, I mean, I think I learned more about his food cuisine taste and appetite at OTA conferences, which we probably all chuckled about a little bit, but hopefully, you know, he gets to enjoy a well-deserved retirement. So, do you have anything you want to add to that, or?
I would echo that. In addition to his competency with the numbers, I think his ability to be able to work with all the department heads, I think you guys would all agree that A, he helped you whenever you needed help, and B, he kept you in line whenever you needed to be kept in line.
That's for sure.
So, you know, that's an amazing trait, and, you know, we just hope that we can continue to find people recognizing that, you know, it's all a team operation. And, you know, he definitely was an important member of the team, and he's going to be missed.
Definitely,
I've never seen him not have a smile on his face. He always is warm and welcoming, and he is very funny, and he was very patient with me and all the questions I had, and he walked me through a lot of stuff, so he will definitely be missed.
Yeah, he's definitely an asset, and he's always gone above and beyond to do whatever he needs to do, and just always dependable, reliable, shows up, and yeah, he'll definitely be missed.
He was sick from
Yeah.
hospital bed, he was still trying to work, so.
Right.
Stop, you have to yell at him.
We have to
Stop.
chase him out of here.
I know,
Yeah.
we're like, take care of yourself.
And I had to send an email that said, don't respond to Luther, don't message him, he's in the hospital, he's trying to get better, but that was him. He was here nights, weekends, just, his work ethic is unmatched, and he really is a friend to all of the department heads, administrative assistants, just an all-around phenomenal guy. And I know when Joellen retired, we thought, oh my gosh, nobody's gonna be able to replace her. Well, he sure stepped in, and he did, and he is gonna be missed. We all really just care for Luther. And he does walk that line of, he is very professional. He'll put all of us in our place, but I could walk in any time and ask a question, and he would drop anything to help any of us. So, 1 in a million.
I mean, it's just notifying the board on it. On this, there's
Yeah.
never, okay. So that concludes fiscal.
Yep, that's the end.
Okay, it's gonna take us to Administrator, Ms. Campbell.
Thank you. Item number 1 is a resolution to enter into the attached yearly radio contract service agreement with Staley Technologies.
I will so move.
Second.
Discussion, this is essentially for our sheriff's radios.
It is, and I have to thank Lieutenant Carver. It's the first time that we've been brought a contract like this for, I know these are newer radios, but the manufacturer warranty is expired, but I just appreciate his forethought and thinking, gosh, we may want to consider a service contract because they're expensive, so thank you for that.
Any further discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Mrs. Harless?
Yes.
And that's the end of the administrator report.
Thank you. It's gonna take us to Fire Department. Chief Schallenberg.
Yeah, thank you. Item number 1 is our monthly report. Sorry for the ice and snow picture on the front, but that was actually only like 26 days ago, believe it or not.
Yeah.
We had that week of cold weather, so.
Those were wickedly cold days, because I stopped over the one day just by pure chance, and I think I handled about 2, maybe 3 minutes, and I'm like, good seeing you guys.
Yeah.
Getting out of here.
Keep the heater going.
Yeah.
Okay, item number 2 is a resolution by the Plain Township Board of Trustees to authorize payments for funds received from the 2019 FEMA grant for SCBA and miscellaneous equipment to Howl Rescue not to exceed $271,328.
I will so move.
Second.
Discussion, roll call.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Mrs. Harless?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Item number 3 is a resolution to authorize purchase and payment for firefighter protective gear, hoods, gloves, and boots from Atlantic Emergency Solutions not to exceed $65,000.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion, roll call.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Mrs. Harless?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Item number 4 is a resolution that the Plain Township trustees establish a reserve account 21H to describe purposes on March 8, 2016 for a period of 5 years. Also be resolved that the fund be transferred, all money back into the Fire District Fund 10, and the fiscal officer be authorized to certify the transfer into the Fire District Fund.
So moved. Fire number 4.
Second.
Discussion, roll call.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Mrs. Harless?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Item number 5 is also a resolution that we establish the Reserve Fund 21J in the year of 2016 for 5 years with a balance of $200,000. And hereby resolve that it be closed and transfer the money back into the Fire Fund District 10.
I will move on fire 5.
I will second it.
Discussion, roll call.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Mrs. Harless?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Item number 6 is a resolution to establish a new reserve balance account to be used for accumulated funds for the fire levy for the period of 5 years and to be named 21P.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion, roll call.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Mrs. Harless?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Item number 7 is also a resolution to establish a reserve balance account for fire levy reserve fund for stabilizing fire department budget during clinical changes or revenue expenditures, not to exceed $200,000 and be called 21Q for 5 years.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion, roll call.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Mrs. Harless?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Item number 8 is a resolution by the Plain Township Board of Trustees to authorize the purchase of payment to T-Con Engineering for architectural fees and bid permit drawings and plans for the location of 2855 Easton Street, not to exceed $16,674.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion, roll call.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Mrs. Harless?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Item number 9 is a resolution to authorize payment for labor and repairs to a generator in Tower 1 by Western Branch Diesel, not to exceed $3,800, to be taken from Fund 10A, 10B.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion, roll call.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Mrs. Harless?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
That concludes fire department, thank you.
Thank you, Chief. It's gonna take us to the road department, Mr. Iacino.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, item number 1 is the February monthly report. So that's the last month of that.
Okay.
Item number 2 is a resolution to hire Daniel Buscini as a full-time mechanic to be paid commensurate with the current union wage rates effective March 15th, 2021, contingent upon a successful pre-employment drug and alcohol test and physical examination.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Joe, just point of clarity, this is the gentleman that's got the prior ODOT.
Yes, he's worked at ODOT for the last 12 years.
Any further discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Mrs. Harless?
Yes.
Item number 3 is a resolution to hire Jacob Cummings as a full-time operator laborer 4 to be paid commensurate with current union wages effective March 15th, 2021, contingent upon successful pre-employment drug, alcohol, and physical examination.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Mrs. Harless?
Yes.
And road number 4 is a resolution to authorize the purchase of gasoline, oil, and diesel fuel from McIntosh Oil at a cost not to exceed $25,000.
I'll move on road 4.
Second.
Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Mrs. Harless?
Yes.
Thank you.
Brings us to zoning department. I actually just want to acknowledge on the record that Tom Farrar has been excused. He's been extremely ill, so in that spirit, we've got the monthly report. I know it was sent out to us prior to the meeting, so anybody, any questions, discussion? Okay, that'll conclude zoning. It's going to take us to Parks Department, Mr. Steinberg.
Thank you. Item number 1 is our monthly report.
Okay.
Okay, item number 2 is a resolution to approve payment to Central Farm and Garden for the purchase of baseball field maintenance material in amount not to exceed $10,751.35 to be taken from Fund 14A06B and 14A05C.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Mrs. Harless?
Yes.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Okay, item number 3, I'm going to read the resolution first, and we get into discussion. I can kind of go through some things. The Plain Township Board of Trustees, Stark County, Ohio, to accept the design layout proposal from Tecton Engineering and authorize the Parks Director to move forward with next steps in the project.
I will so move on parts number 3.
I will second.
Discussion.
Yes, so they sent us the initial blush last week. I sent it out to you folks to review. I just wanted to point out a couple things that I really did like the way it was laid out with the plumbing chase straight down the middle to have direct access to those hookups if we need to for our plumber. John asked a good question today I wanted to bring up in public, and that is the idea of the building facing west toward the west parking lot for several main reasons. One, it's easier to surveil with all 3 of those doors being on one side and having the ability to have a camera on one of the poles directly facing it. 2, for service, given the utility room also faces that side, entering the utility room or any of the other sides of the facility could become directly from the parking lot, which means they're not driving around onto the ball fields or soccer fields, which makes maintenance on those a lot easier when you're dealing with rollers and stuff on those fields. It may have been Brooke that asked me previously about the number of stalls, if they were sufficient. I would tell you, based on the amount of volume we get on busy days at Vets Park with the same amount of facilities between the dog park, the splash pad, and everything else, I would say it's more than sufficient to hold, especially since we have more units in this building than we would ever have in porta-johns available. So I think we would be fine. And then outside of that, I certainly wanted to open up the discussion or points that I may not have brought up or missed initially.
I think we're all answered on the front end with the heating and the insulation, because we can, I won't support anything that replicates what we've got over at back there.
No, we actually built in just, I mean, when you see the specifications and you see what the options will be, we optioned in certain things, not knowing what the overall cost is going to be. For example, we optioned in the possibility of the water hookup being able to be bled. If God forbid something does happen, and we have to get the water out of there, none of the pipes are going to break. And we also followed that up with an option of when they do the wiring at the connection, to wire it with the capability of a portable generator to be able to at least attach to that side. So even if it's a period of 6 to 8 hours, we won't have to shut the water off. And if the power's off for some reason, all you gotta do is plug a portable generator in, flip the transfer switches manually, and it'll run either the electric furnace or the option of a gas furnace that he's gonna bid as an option, because we don't know what the cost of the gas line is gonna be.
And that's where the total cost of
Correct, exactly. So once all that is put together, then from a specification standpoint, we can cut and paste as far as money goes to see how much do we want it to cost overall. So I think for now, though, we're only looking at the footprint and where we want that footprint to actually sit. So I'm okay. I feel a lot better. Eric, obviously you're the surveillance guy. How do you feel about that?
We got cameras down there, we got power down there. I know we got a 100 amp service, they should be able to draw off of that. That was all restrung by the AEP company when we put those surveillance cameras down there, so absolutely. I put a windsock on it, just, you know, as an afterthought.
Yeah. Yeah, I get it. Yeah. Yeah.
Doesn't interfere with that.
Any further discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Mrs. Harless?
Yes.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
And finally, number 4 is a resolution from the Plain Township Board of Trustees to approve purchase and authorize payment to Vasco Sports Contractors for repair of cracks in the 3 tennis courts at Alino Community Park in an amount not to exceed $67.67 to be taken from Fund 01F02.
I'll move on, Parks 4.
Second, discussion.
Yeah, so we redid those courts 5 or 6 years ago. It's just the weathering and time that it takes to start doing this. And the reason it's imperative we do now so we can get on their schedule is because we already have stencils and paint in so that we can create pickleball courts on those tennis courts to be multi-use courts by the spring. I know that I've talked to several of you individually, and it's a service that we've been wanting to offer, and we now finally have that opportunity.
I am very excited because there are so many people I know that.
Well, the course down by Hall for the McKinley Monument, certain nights, it's just insanely
Oh, yeah, they're packed.
packed, so we may end up getting into something where
We need lighting.
if folks try monopolizing
Yeah.
courts for an evening, it may
Might
get
have
into,
to,
hey, a schedule.
oh, absolutely. Very possible.
Active, or
Yeah.
whatever.
You can lead the leagues and everything else.
Absolutely.
That would be beneficial.
Yeah. Okay. Roll call?
Mrs. Harless,
Yes,
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes. Nothing from our fearless law director?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Communications, nothing. It brings us to the portion of the meeting, public speaks. If there's anybody in the audience that wishes to address the Board of Trustees, we ask you to state your name and your address for the record. And you can either stay there, we've got microphones in the ceiling, or you can come to the podium, whatever your preference is.
Good evening. My name is Jim Wenger, resident of 3608 26th Street, Northwest Canton. Back on February 16th, my wife was going out to her vehicle in the driveway, and one of our pet dogs scooted out beside her and went across the road, and I won't call it a confrontation, but the neighbor's dog and our dog was barking at each other and so on and so forth. Nobody got bit, neither dog got hurt. And the reason I don't know how you want to say it, I don't want to say contesting the $25 bid, but it really boils down to the physical condition of my wife that I really believe the whole thing took place to start with. 10 years ago, she had colon cancer, and she had surgery and went through all the treatment and everything, and came through it okay. And a couple of years later, she formed a tumor between her skull and her brain. And they did chemo and radiation and the whole 9 yards, and they got that under control. Then she came to have non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, which there's a treatment for it, but there's no cure for it. That's for the rest of her life. And she also has the beginnings of Parkinson's. Her hands are starting to tremble on that. And the reason I bring all those things up, my wife is 73 years old. Our whole backyard is totally fenced. So it's not as though we don't care what happens to our dogs, where they go, what they do, anything like that. Again, with the physical condition that my wife is challenged with, one of the dogs popped out beside her when she was going out to her vehicle, and that situation took place. I guess the neighbor found it necessary to call and issue a complaint, whatever you want to call it, whatever you do call it. All I'm saying is that under the physical conditions of my wife and her age, I'm just asking that council, trustees, I guess you'd say have some leniency. Again, nobody got hurt, the animals, nobody. My wife got the dog back in our yard pretty quick. But again, I don't know if the neighbor was having a bad morning or what, but they found it necessary to call the sheriff, and they came out and they made a report, and then we got this. Anyway, again, I didn't come to cry the blues to you or anything, but, you know, as we all get older, we all face more challenges in life, and some of us more than others. And I don't believe it was carelessness or nonchalant on my wife's part. It was an unfortunate circumstance, and I would just like the $25 to be rescinded. That's why I'm here.
I guess where to start. Ryan, is it fair to ask you to speak to any type of documentation?
I did provide the original incident report to Lisa earlier this morning so that you guys could review what was reported to the deputies. A little bit different than what he's recollecting here today, but I would defer to your judgment as to how you feel it needs to be handled.
Within the report, from what I read, no humans were bit but there did appear to be other individual
Yes.
dog, a
Yeah,
nose,
neighbor.
a nose laceration, but he, based upon the report, chose not to pursue anything. He was gonna monitor in that aspect, so that's
Yes.
what the deputy had documented. I'm gonna,
Is it fair to say, though, that that wasn't the first time they've been out there for that?
Yes, from what was documented in the report, I believe this was the first time we were called out there. The neighbor reported that it was not the first time that
Oh,
this
okay.
had happened.
Right.
It's not been something where we've had to respond out there on a regular basis or anything like that.
Everything I just said, I wasn't there when it took place, so if what I said didn't match exactly, I don't want you to think I'm up there trying to blow smoke up somebody's rear end. I'm saying the way it was explained to me, so, you know, forgive me if things don't match 100%. I'm not here trying to pull the wool over your eyes.
How many of these do we usually write each time?
Not a lot.
Okay.
These are fairly rare.
Is it fair to say we give, like, well, some kind of warning or something the first time?
Typically, if it was just where a deputy came upon the dogs at large, we would normally give a warning on the first offense. I believe in this instance, because there was another dog that had received an injury, that's why the deputy opted to go with the citation.
And we do have, there was evidence that that other dog had been bitten.
Yes, based upon the deputy's report, that appeared accurate.
I don't know, kind of torn on it because of the fact that it is, if it was a loose dog, not only, I would typically err on the side of some leniency, but given the fact that, and I feel for you based upon your wife's health issues, I wouldn't wish that on anybody, but I've still got a responsibility, I mean, realistically, to back what our deputies see and experience, because even though it's a limited number of times that this has historically happened, as the deputy's spoken to, I also, as much as I got to take into account your interest, I also have a responsibility to our sheriff's deputies to make sure that, you know, we're supporting them in the enforcement of whether it's our home rule resolutions or the Ohio Revised Code that these guys are entrusted with. Because whenever we start to, you know, waive some of this, I can tell you from my ride-alongs, I'm sure both gentlemen at the back of the room can say, it starts to get real frustrating that, okay, what the time, energy, and effort to address that issue, and then it's just written off. So I don't know if either of you have anything else to add. Unfortunately, I'll just say right now, I still think the $25 fee should stay as my personal.
That's why I asked that question. If, you know, if the deputy felt comfortable that that did in fact happen. And obviously we have that documented on a report. What happens the next time if that dog goes out and bites a kid or somebody else? And so I think following up on that, I would agree. I think we have to let it stand. If it was a situation where, you know, that didn't happen, but with that happening, I just think we have to let that stand as it is.
Okay. All right, well, thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anybody else in the audience that wishes to address the Board of Trustees? Okay, that'll conclude the public speaks. It'll take us to concerns of trustees. Do either of you, Brooke or John, have anything you need to speak to? Okay, nothing on our concerns of trustees. That'll take us to concerns of the fiscal officer.
No concerns.
Okay, that will take us to the approval of minutes for February 23rd, 2021, and I will so move.
I'll second.
Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Mrs. Harless?
Yes.
Then we have approval of the special meeting minutes for March 1st, 2021, and I will so move.
Second.
Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Mrs. Harless?
Yes.
We do have a need for executive session, so I'll make a motion be hereby resolved by the Plain Township Board of Trustees, Stark County, Ohio, to adjourn the executive session at 6:39 from this regular meeting as authorized under Ohio Revised Code 121.22G for the purpose of consideration of 1F, compensation of a public employee or official, for preparing for, conducting, or reviewing negotiations or bargaining sessions with public employees.
Second.
Discussion, roll call.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Mrs. Harless?
Yes.